Welcome everybody. Just a quick reminder that anything you see on this channel is advice and done in a purely entertainment capacity only. I'm just a guy working on his stuff that breaks in his front yard. That's it. There are no warranties implied or given. This is just me working on junk, passing on what I've learned. End disclaimer. Good afternoon, everybody out there in YouTube land. My name is Jared, and this is my channel, Mazda B3K. In this video, it's going to be an automotive departure here. We are replacing a bad pressure switch on my well, and I'm going to show you how to replace it, and I'm going to talk about how I figured out it was a bad pressure switch. Without further ado, let's get started. So the first step in your journey, please excuse the air conditioner, is you got to check power, right? So as you can see, my well runs on 240, it's a 20 amp breaker, and my first step was to check to make sure I had power here. You're going to take a meter, make sure you're going to set it to volts, which is the V right there, and make sure you're set to AC voltage, not DC voltage. You will get a completely wrong reading if you don't have it set right. Check here, make sure that you have 120 volts or 126 volts coming in on each leg, each pole, which I did, and it was fine. Now we're about to start maintenance, so I'm cutting power here. And then we move to the next spot in the line. So if you have a well like me, you're gonna have a setup that's gonna be something kind of like this. You may not have a water softener, that's fine. But you're gonna have something like this, and this is a big physical cutoff. That's what this is. And it's trying very hard to be naughty. Okay, so see that? That's a big physical pull. And this is how, if crap's going down, you can physically pull that plug out and it breaks the connection. So here what you're doing is you see that we've got wire coming in. Right here. This is the power coming into the box. Again, take your meter out, set it to volts, set it to AC volts, and you're going to check power coming in. Make sure you see 126 volts here on both legs. If you do, proceed to the next step. So in my case, following the power out of our physical brake box, come over here, and that takes us over to our pressure switch. And what this does on a well is it's got a little, I think it's like a 1/4 line that is checking the pressure of this tank. And if pressure goes above or below what this is mechanically set to, what will happen is if it drops below, it'll turn on and repressurize up to, whatever you're set to. If it goes above that pressure mark, it turns the well off, so you don't overpressurize your storage tank and blow it up. So here is my tank. It is a 75 psi tank, so I try to keep it between 50-55 on the high end. Okay, so you see there's power coming out of here, right? So when this closes contacts, and I'll show you that in a minute, comes into here, goes into here, and if you pull this apart, there's again physical contacts in here, and this runs down into the well. Because I have a submerged well, it's about 80 foot down, and it fires it off, and then the well pushes the water up and into the system. Now in my case, we need to focus in on the pressure switch. So 8mm to take the hat off. And then here we are, and before we touch anything, we're going to check with our meter one more time and make sure all of this is dead so we don't get electrified. All right, again, on my meter, you have to set it to volts, and then hit function. And you know you've got it if it's also trying to give you a hertz rating, and when you see it says AC with a wavy line right there. So then you're going to come up here And it really doesn't matter which probe goes where as far as the polarity, but one probe needs to go into a ground, which are these two screws here at the bottom that have the bare wire going in. And then your other wire, in this case, goes to this gray wire that has some shielding on it because it was direct burial, right? And we check here, we're getting like 1.5 volts. That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. That's not going to hurt you. And then you're going to check the other leg. Same deal, direct burial wire, easy way to tell, it's gray. Again, we're getting like a volt. And then we can check our other ground because we have 2 grounds to check. 1.8, that's fine. And 1.6. We're not scared. That doesn't scare us. So this effectively is electrically dead. If it was hot, what you would have seen is 126 volts off each leg. And again, the preface to all this is that you live in the United States, because electricity is one of those weird, wonderful things that was very unique depending on when a country got it, as we learned about it, which is why most of Europe and Asia runs on some variant of 220 to 240 volts, while the nations that got it earlier run on 120. There's a fascinating story there. I suggest you go research it. It's very interesting. Anyway, now what we can do is remember for posterity what's going where, right? So basically our 2 hots coming in from our main pole are going to go on the outside, and then we have our hot going to the well. One side is basically, it's the 2 insides are our 2 well hots, okay? Because we're dealing with 220 here, or 240, not 120. So we need to take all those out, and then we have our grounds here and a dead spider, high dead spider, and we need to take those out. These are all Phillips, right? I apologize for lighting. It's dark in my pump shed and I do not have a light source in here. So we got to do all that, which is fine and dandy, but then we also need to disconnect our wire here, right? I think our disconnect's down there for that one. We have a disconnect over here. And then we have to disconnect our pipe. And I think what we need to do is literally spin it off once we get all the wiring out, I think is how this is going to work. And I say that because if we look at our replacement here, we got all of our stuff, and then that's already bolted in, right? So the whole unit spins on the pipe. Oh, I forgot to mention what was broken, right? So what wound up broken on this is, you see we have these contactor pads, and when the switch throws them forward, that closes the circuit, the well turns on, right? So what happened was the spring, I'm pretty sure, completely wore out in this pad. So what was happening is it would slam forward to run the well, and then when it would let go, the spring wouldn't provide tension, and the rod that this all sits on would just fall out. And then once it fell out, the next time the switch commanded the well to run, this side would close like it was supposed to. This side didn't. The well needs both legs to run, so it didn't run. And that's how I found it. And I was able to just shove it back in a couple of times, but it just got worse and worse. So what I finally did, one of those true redneck moments, is I super glued it. Put a blob of super glue on the back, let it sit for half an hour, and then I tried it, and that has held. It held long enough that I didn't have to go waste 40 bucks at the local hardware store to buy a switch that I had ordered for half the cost on Amazon. So let's go ahead and start taking things apart. All right, so what holds our wire to this is there's a retainer nut there. They're not in there tight. I was able to break it loose with just this Phillips, and as you can see, it's kind of backing it out there. Once we get it spun off, we can, There we go. So we'll get that out of the way, and then we can detach that. And then we should, I think, just be able to spin the entire assembly off. Hopefully we don't spin that out. I may clamp onto this with like a slip jaw pliers or something to make sure we don't have any problems. So that's going to be a nut. I don't know what size. I want to go find that out too. Just had a thought, guys. This is connected to the main line, right? That means that's sitting under 50 pounds of pressure right now, which means I need to drain the pressure before I try to do this for two reasons. Number one is when things are under pressure, it's harder to get them to come apart. And then number two, I don't want a geyser of water blowing the roof off my pump shed. So let me drain that, and then I'll figure out what size that nut is. So plan A was supposed to be to take this off from this pipe. That didn't work. So plan B was to spin the pipe off from the main pipe, get it in the vise, then separate it. And that's what we're doing right now. There you have it. By the way, this is a 19 millimeter. The old one is off. I'm gonna go get my pipe tape, thread this up or tape this up, go grab the new one, spin it on there. All right, got the tripod just for you guys. Okay, Teflon tape, plumber's tape, pipe tape, lots of names, all the same stuff. It's a Teflon based tape. You use it to help secure connections. When you use Teflon tape, you want to wrap it the direction you're going to turn the pipe. Because if you do it the other way, it will unwind as you are attaching whatever you're going to attach. So, kind of important. All right, that should be fine. Just kind of, you can be nice to that, but I'm lazy. Well, I'm not really lazy, I'm pressed for time, as usual. That's my MO. Okay, so then we put our nut on. We put this, yeah, it's a nut. Words. Come on. No, you'll go on there, you punk. There it goes. So we want this on there firmly, right? Because this is going to be up to, this switch is supposed to be a 30 to 50 PSI switch. So that means you want to make sure you don't have any leaks at 50 pounds of pressure. And I don't know what that red is, but it's not blood, I promise. This time. It's generally automotive things that make me bleed. Okay, that's pretty good. And then I'm gonna have to, I'll thread the other end before I reinstall it into the main pipe. And then we will use this nut again to position the switch on the main pipe. So, as you can see, just gonna spinning this in by hand right now until I can't. And then we're gonna switch to the 19. I might give it one more turn round, and then we'll go ahead and start working on the electrical, because you know I can't check for leaks until all this is back together, because this is what commands the the well to fire. So okay, let's take a look at what we have. Our power coming in is on the outside, our well power is on the inside. We've got well ground over here. We've got power coming in, ground over here. All of this is nice and tight. We put these back in. Remember, there's these little sprocket nut things. Need to be there. Either side. They don't have to be crazy tight, just enough that this isn't, gonna go flying apart. So at this point, we can actually go ahead and we can test fire this. Currently, it's in the go position. See, the contacts are closed. Now, this is a 30 to 50 PSI, so by default, we should see it pressurize up to 50 PSI. You can adjust this by turning these nuts for the low and high. I think that's low, I think that's high. do that at your own risk. This is a 30 to 50 and you can mess with it if you need to. But at the same time, know what you're working with, right? This is a 75 PSI tank. I wouldn't want it any higher than 60. I want to leave a nice safety margin so I'm not replacing a tank, you know, in the future, unless I want to. Anyway, I'm gonna get my wife to kick the power. I'm gonna stay in here to watch this to make sure crazy's not happening. And if crazy happens, we have our manual disconnect over here. So and here we go. So far so good. The well has kicked off. We don't have any pressure yet because I drained it dry. See how this goes. We should start building pressure here in a second. There it goes. It's 10. I'll bring you back around 50 and make sure this cuts off like it's supposed to. Alright, here we go. See if she cuts off like she's supposed to. There you go. Beautiful. See, we've got a good gap there. If you were to take something insulated and you were to slam those shut, the well would turn on. But this looks like a good repair. Let's check for leaks. We're at 50 PSI, nothing from there. Nothing from here. I will monitor the next couple of days, but I think we're good. I think this is a good repair.